Welcome, everyone. So, we're here today to discuss chapter 4 of this amazing book by Mooji G called Vaster Than Sky, Greater Than Space. I just recently read the chapter, so it's very fresh in my mind. Hope you guys had a chance to read the chapter. If not, it's all good. There is so much rich insight in the book that we can explore and really decipher and still get a really good session and conversation out of the lives. So, do not worry if you haven't read the chapter or have the book. If you do have time and the budget, please purchase this book. It is just a phenomenal book to add to your collection of self-development books. And today we will be learning the insights from chapter 4. A great chapter. Hey, Roger, thanks for being here with us. So there's a lot to get through, so we'll get straight into it, and then we will discuss some of the insights. We won't go through every single page because it's quite a long chapter, 30 pages or so, but I have highlighted some really cool insights and knowledge to really recognize the self, and then we'll talk about that together. Okay, so it starts on page 63. The person's work is never done. The light of the self is always present. It is the source of all manifestation. In this sense, you are always the self, but unless the direct recognition of your true nature takes place in you, you are not the self. In being truly awake, you are conscious of your timelessness. You are conscious of life as the unity of allness experienced beyond time, beyond phenomena. You live in and as that. You live in and as that. What a seeming paradox. We are all perfect, yet something needs to be recognized for us to awaken to our inherent perfection. Be aware that when I say that you are already perfect, it is not that I'm giving you a compliment. I am not showing you that you are perfect in a way the mind would like. You are not perfect as a person. Rather, discover the timeless perfection that is your original being. Then you show me. You have to discover the truth for yourself. Then you will know that its power is not just a theory and that it is not a hoax. And I don't want you to delay the realization of this truth. No, you are this today. Something inside of you may respond, well, I don't feel it. But even feeling is not enough. You must come to know it in your heart. I am always pointing you toward the non-phenomenal recognition. You are already rich. So, it starts off again. So there's a lot of things in this book will repeat. And again, as Mooji says, that his message is always the same. It is not a complex message. He's pointing you to recognize the self. But what makes it complex is our ability to grasp this insight with the intellect. And this is where a lot of us get confused, because when we try to understand this insight with the intellect, it can make it difficult because we tend to over intellectualize something that has to be experienced within our hearts, because there are two main types of experience. We have the mind experience, processing information, definitions that we give reality through the senses, frameworking reality through what we call the brain. Then we've got the heart sphere. Like I said in our last live or last week, the mind thinks, the heart knows. So when we come downstairs to the heart sphere and we really retire to this inner sanctuary, we tend to have this really blissful experience with life and space around us, only if we can stay in there for long enough, where we transcend our analytical mind. Because when thinking has become so habitual for many of us, there is such a strong gravitational pull from your mind that takes your attention. And when we do not have the maturity, when I say maturity, I mean when our attention isn't mature enough to stay in the feeling of the heart, then we tend to always get caught up in thought process, and we're back into the faculties of the mind and being consumed by our psychological mind, the ego self. So this becomes a tug of war between, where is your attention? Is it in the mind or is it in the heart? And how long can you keep it in the heart without being distracted? So that is meditation in itself. And this is why we practice. But the practice itself should be effortless, not effortful. And this is the paradox, because when it becomes effortful, then it is not really a, tuning into what is. It's more putting effort in, where it should be a really, flow, should be a really, I guess, flowful, if that's even a word, a flowful practice where you kind of, as they teach in the Tao Te Ching, falling into emptiness, really kind of dropping into what is without any effort. And over time, we understand this better because we have more practice. And mindfulness is another branch of this, because when we start becoming more mindful, it's easier for us to feel without being identified with each thought that comes into our minds. Okay, so it's page 64. You are already rich. So this goes into a really nice story that talks about how, there was two really good friends, and one friend said to the other friend that he had come across this money or this treasure that he has buried in his house, and not to tell his wife or his son because it would spoil them and they didn't have the wisdom to manage this money. And anyway, the friend goes overseas for a very long time, comes back 7 years later to find the wife and the son begging on the street. He approaches the lady and says, do you remember me? The lady turns around and says, yes, you're my husband's best friend. And she finds out the husband had passed away. And, to his shock, he turns around and says, did you know that you have this treasure in your backyard? It's full of money. You don't have to beg anymore. I can take you to this treasure. She was very ecstatic. She was very joyful. As soon as she heard the news, her and her son automatically felt more rich, felt more at peace, felt more freedom. They go to the house that they used to live in, and they start digging up the backyard. And to their surprise, they find this treasure chest with all this money in it. And at the end of the story, it says, now this treasure had been there on her property since before her husband's death. So it had always been hers. But before unearthing the treasure, were she and her before unearthing the treasure, were she and her son rich? No, the hidden treasure had always been there, but they were unaware of it. So they had no access to what that treasure could have made possible. We are like the woman and her son. We are free. We have always been free. We are none other than this pure, perfect being, even though we may not yet be conscious of this. Some amount of trust is necessary, as there are forces working to distract you. It is part of the game of consciousness that it should not be easy to find the treasure that is already yours. If it were too easy, you might not value it. Some people may ask, why should we have to go through this if we are perfect? Why haven't we been able to manifest this perfection? Well, we are perfect, but somehow we're all in this dream of Maya, which is the illusion of life, together, and we are attached to this dream. We want to keep dreaming even while we wish to awaken. So this reminds me of Eckhart Tolle's story in The Power in a New Earth, where the beggar is sitting on a box begging, and inside that box is full of gold or treasure or abundance, money. And then he's begging, begging, begging. And then this guy walks past and says, hey, you don't have to beg anymore because you're sitting on a treasure full of gold. And the beggar doesn't believe him. And then he gets up, he opens up this box, and it's full of gold. And the story is that we have this treasure within us. We have this abundance within us. We have this riches within us. But we are so distracted that we don't recognize the treasure within us, the abundance within us, because we're so identified with the outside world, and the outside world is always changing. It's transient. And when we identify with an impermanent reality, then the foundation of our identity is unstable, because reality itself is unstable, because nothing is the same. Everything is changing. So going back to this story that Mooji talks about, even though the lady and her son had this treasure all this time, they were unaware of it, right? They were unaware of it until someone pointed them to this treasure. And this is like us. We have this pure potential. We have consciousness. We have this abundance, this perfection, this completeness within us that is unchangeable, that is not bound by change. It is infinite, it is eternal, and it is always there, but we are unaware of it, like the woman and her son is unaware of the treasure. And once we can be pointed to the treasure within us, then this becomes a revelation in itself, because we start to really feel the richness within our soul, within our spirit, independent to what is happening in the outside world. Because again, if you define your emotional state or your true identity or the self through the outside world, then it's always going to change. You're going to be like this yo-yo going up and down, living in this emotional roller coaster ride of duality. One day you're happy, the next day you're sad, the next day you're sad, then you're happy, you're up and you're down, and it's never content. But again, we have this treasure within us. And once we can really recognize this treasure and start to connect with this openness, we transcend time, we transcend space, we transcend this reality and really connect with what is the substance or the glue that makes up the universe. And that's something special that can only be felt through our hearts. So great story there. And then we go on to page 66, the theater of consciousness. Each day, the consciousness resolves through three states: the deep sleep, dreaming, and waking states. The waking state is what we refer to as our life. However, this life and all that you experience, including the sense of yourself, is only the content and the play of the waking state. Excuse me. If your name is John, you cannot be John 24 hours a day. For when deep sleep comes, even the sense I am subsides, and with it goes consciousness of the body and mind. In deep sleep, you are not Muslim, Christian, Jew, or Hindu. You are you, nor are you a man or a woman. Nothing is there with you in deep sleep. But a subtle form of consciousness must remain in even deep sleep for you to know about this state. Okay, where was I? And everybody enjoys deep sleep. Even some people buy the best mattresses in order to enter this state where we forget everything. What does this show us? It shows us that even the most beautiful state of presence, that consciousness that shines inside this body as the sense I am and functions as a impartial observer of manifestation of life, is not the ultimate reality. When you begin to reflect a little bit about these things, a deeper understanding emerges about what we call ourself and life. You will come to see for yourself that this waking state of consciousness itself is phenomenal and is also seen. Every morning we wake up from our dreams, but to be truly awake, we must also awaken from the waking state. The waking state, our daily life, is like a theater of consciousness in which you appear on the stage as one of the actors in this life, in this play called life. All that you call your life belongs to this show that runs for 16 hours a day. And at 6 a.m., the alarm rings, lights on, show starts. You don't question who you were in the deep sleep at 5:59 a.m. The sense of I arises, and somehow you pick up the me again. Oh, yes, here I am. I am an executive with an important meeting today. I can do this. Throughout the day, you interact with others, you laugh, you cry, you get scared. But much like the audience watching a play, you also watch yourself apparently doing all these things. Can we really be both the actor and the audience to life's unfolding at the same time? Yes, but first we have to become aware of our true position in all of this as the untouched observer. That's a very important line. First, we need to become aware of our true position in all of this as the untouched observer. Pure observing without self-interest. Pure observing without self-interest is what categorizes the self, and that is the understanding of those who have become established in true self-knowledge. In the light of pure self-awareness, one still experiences life in the sense of you and me, but now the impact of these senses of duality becomes more superficial in its effect. The neutral, uninvolved witnessing of all that arises in our daily wakeful state is what I call presence. And the person inside the witness and the person itself is witness inside presence. Much spiritual practices much spiritual practice or sadhana is to bring the beingness that is identified as person back to the natural state of presence. The final step, which not a step at all, but rather a non-phenomenal recognition, is that the natural sense I am or I exist is also phenomenal to the ultimate seeing. Rare, very rare is one who comes beyond this stateless state of I am into the realm wherefrom even the I am presence is observed. There we will there we are in a unspeakable, the wordless truth, which is our absolute reality. I don't want you to believe this. I want you to be this. Very, very powerful words. Very powerful words. And this is how powerful self inquiry is and how much of a paradox it can be because first we have to recognize what attention is, right? What is attention? Where is my attention? Your attention, again, I say this a lot, is like a spotlight. Where you channel your attention is the area that lights up and you start to process that information. On average, the conscious mind processes maybe 2 million bits of information, while the subconscious processes 2 billion amounts of information. So there's a lot of information we miss unless we focus our attention into these areas of our experience or reality. So where does attention come from? Where is the source of attention? Asking yourself these questions and breaking down these elements that make up this beingness to life, this experience we call life, is very wise because it allows you to go back within and trace back where attention comes from. And I've meditated on this question quite a bit, and I feel my answer that makes sense to me is that attention is a streamline of consciousness, right? Where it comes from consciousness, but it's very focused consciousness that can obviously be channeled to different parts of reality or experience. And then you can start to then process that information. When we start to trace back our attention and we start to really ask the question, where am I paying attention from? We start to introspect and go back to its source. Now, this is no different, in my opinion, than how Sri Ramana Maharishi teaches in the book Who Am I, when we start to question the I. Who am I? And we start to isolate the I without touching it with any other sentence or words. And once you can isolate the I, there comes a point where it starts to merge back into awareness. So when we bring our attention back in and we start to pay attention to awareness, we're now in a different state of consciousness because our attention isn't outside of us, our attention is within us. And once we start to pay attention to the awareness, then we start to shift our paradigm and the inner world starts to become more real than the outer world. And this is where you become the conscious observer, observing the programs, impulses, propensities that make up your experience or make up your behaviors and actions. And you're no longer the programs, the impulses, and the propensities. You are now the conscious observer. And this is where we start to reprogram the brain as well through conscious observation. Because unless we're aware, we have all these programs that are governing our lives and we don't even have any idea what's happening. We're just kind of the victim to subconscious mechanisms. So once we start to come back and we start to introspect and we start to pay attention to awareness, after a certain point, attention will emerge with awareness and you will start to become more self-aware. But even this state can be observed, and this is where we start to go deeper into the into inquiry, and this is where he talks about it's very rare. Rare is one who becomes beyond this stateless state of I am into the realm wherefrom even I am presence is observed. There we are in a unspeakable, the wordless truth, which is our absolute reality. And this is, before the first word is spoken, there is silence. Before the very last word is spoken, there is silence. Silence is a great teacher, and it seems that silence is it's such a powerful force, and everything seems to retreat to silence. And only through that silence, I believe, we start to truly evolve as consciousness. We evolve through silence and experience, right? Don't get me wrong, we evolve for experience, but we evolve, the evolution is accelerated more through silence. Belief must become reality. And I like this metaphor. Mind is like the wind. Your real self is like space. The nature of the wind is to blow about, but it needs space in which to do that. You know of the wind only through the effects that you see, feel, hear, and there is something in its way. Similarly, you know the mind only because the identity is there. Space doesn't move about, it is present everywhere. Space cannot be without the wind, but the wind cannot be without space. The wind is always blowing in different directions. Can anyone determine which way the wind will blow? Can anyone, whatever direction that may be, it can never move outside of space. Similarly, it is not possible for you to ever move away from yourself. When you know this so profoundly that it becomes a kind of knowing beyond thought, then you are free. You can move as you will because you cannot move out of yourself. That which is moving temporary in nature, you are the unmoving within the moving. Experiencing the sense of moving, you are the invisible inside the visible, but you also appear as the visible. Bit of a paradox, but very, very insightful. By focusing so much attention on which is subject to change, we are trying to care for the we are still trying to care for and control something that by nature can never be stable. The personal identity will experience the notion of being stable for a while, and then it will be up and running again. That is the nature of changeable. Leave it to its nature and stay as you are. Some concepts pull us into the illusion that we are just flickering, that we are just a flickering self-image. But the truth is that we simultaneously are and aren't that. So now, to give us a more deeper insight understanding, we go into this metaphor of the two birds, which I think I've mentioned this metaphor to you guys before, but we'll read it from Mooji G words because it's very powerful. The two birds. Some time ago, I saw a picture depicting a parable from the Bhagavad Gita. It showed two birds in a tree, and one of them was building a nest. This one was flying off, collecting things, arranging twigs. It's active, doing many things. Above this bird, another branch is a second bird. It looks identical to the first bird, but it's not building anything. It is just observing. It's not building a self-image out of its perceiving, and it's not deeply interested in any aspects of what it sees. Its perceiving is happening quite spontaneously without effort or judgment. There is silence there, the feeling of being without thought, just looking. This is a beautiful portrait of who we are. These two birds are connected. The first bird represents our dynamic being, the self that is engaged in the world, in future and the past, in growing. It is the aspect that is living life with the sense of my family, my children, my work, and so on. The second bird represents that conscious witnessing within us. It is the ability to observe life taking place and activities unfolding, but it is not actually doing anything. It is still within the same body, but it is not manipulating. It is not saying, I hope this and I fear that. No, it is very still. It is simply there, and its seeing is panoramic. It sees not only the first bird, but it also the wind in the trees, the sky. Everything is observed with a kind of neutrality. Initially, the first bird is identified with building the nest. It may not even be aware of the second bird, but as soon as it is able to be quiet, it becomes aware of the second bird. So you see where this is going, which is actually itself at a deeper inner level. When the first bird's mind is synchronized with the second bird, the activities become more gracious. That is the sense of unity, a oneness. In that harmony, the work may still happen, but without obsession, without fear, without the sense of needing to control things. It is simply happening because life compels this activity to happen. It is through another power. It is through another power is helping this action take place. The second bird represents a change of perspective from the mode of person to a state of presence. When we are involved in the activities of life so deeply that it seems that the daily routine is all that there is, then we are like the first bird, the nest, the builder, oblivious to our second bird's position. Come to the second bird's position, to the one who is observing. Then you will discover that the one who is busy building a life will slowly become more transparent, leaving only the functioning itself. The activities are happening anyway, beautifully, but the sense of doership, which is the ego sense, will fade away. Activities are just happening. Our self-image is our self-image as a person is just happening, but our true self is not happening. In fact, the true self is a third position, which is not the bird, but the space within which both birds are arising and seen. Now, this is mind blowing, and it goes back to paying attention to awareness. Okay, paying attention to the second bird that is observing. This is your observer. This is the seer. This is the ghost in the machine, the all seeing witness, right? So, attention can pay, you can channel your attention to be aware of being aware. But then there's a third dimension to this level of self awareness where you can actually then feel the space in which there is awareness and attention, right? Activity, and it goes to say, but our true self is not happening. In fact, the true self is a third position in which is not the bird, which is not your observation, right? Observing the dynamic bird, but the space within both birds are rising from and seen. So again, it goes deeper to then feel the space. So attention is one element. Okay, the first bird is the ego self going out there trying to build a career, playing these roles, doing life, and just being you in your day-to-day functions. The second bird is the consciousness, the observer, the witness that is always there in the background, observing everything that you do. Even now, your conscious mind is processing all these words and associating it with all the neural networks in your brain and defining a certain understanding to what I'm saying that then builds insight on your awareness or perception. But there is a background witnessing that's allowing all this to happen. But then as we go deeper into this self-inquiry, there's the space in which allows all this phenomena to happen. There's a space, there's an ether, which allows awareness to arise, and also the attention to pay attention to the awareness, which is very confusing. It's very confusing trying to understand it with your intellect because the intellect doesn't have the capacity to understand. But I think it must be felt, because once you start going within and starting to feel and introspecting your attention within the body, you start to become aware of your thoughts, you start to become aware of your feelings, you start to become aware of your sensations, and you start to become aware of being aware. But then there's also a space in which all this awareness is kind of housed in. There's a deeper space. So, can the perceiver or the witness be observed? You know, and that is the paradox. And that, again, do not try and understand this with your intellect, because you'll just blow a gasket in your brain, so to speak. Go within and feel it. And it does take time to kind of get to this level of connection with the self. If you come to see and accept what I'm pointing to, and if you can slow down just a bit, your witnessing will become very serene, and you will notice that the activities of life are just happening by themselves. The wind doesn't say, I'm going to blow this tree. So it is not that your thoughts and the sense that I must do this or that are just happening. But because there is still identity with this sense, I am the doer, the single mistake begets and then feeds hundreds others and feeds 100 other mistakes. You can discover the truth of who you are, and you can do it now. What gets in your way is your loyalty to the old regime of thinking. I highlighted that. You can discover the truth of who you are, and you can do it now, in this moment, right now. But what gets in the way? Your loyalty to the old regime of thinking. We're too loyal to these old thought patterns and egocentric, egocentric structures of the mind that keep us in this prison. The loyalty is in the wrong place, because all that does is really inevitably lead us to suffering and malfunction. your loyalty to the old regime of thinking, to the habit and idea of continuing on as who you were yesterday and who you were last month. It may also seem like a big risk to accept something that might be too transformative. You may feel, I can't handle so much, and this thought seems to be deeply held. You want so you want so much but offer so little of yourself in return. Thirsty, you want to drink deeply, but you come to the fountain with a teaspoon in your hand. That's quite funny. Thirsty, you want to drink deeply, but you come to the fountain with a teaspoon in your hand. That's hilarious. You may ask, are you telling me that I don't have to do anything in particular that that I am already that? Yes, I reply. You say, but how can I be that when my mind is full of nonsense and screaming? Let it scream, I respond, but I'm sure the Buddha didn't have a screaming mind. You object. I say, how do you know that the Buddha didn't have a screaming mind, but simply ignored it? Please understand that ignoring thoughts does not mean trying to stop or suppress thoughts. Simply turn away from them. Some thoughts, however, keep showing up no matter what, where you turn. They seem to have a season pass for your attention. This, when I tell you what you cannot ignore, simply observe. And again, you know, thoughts audition. They audition for your attention. And this is the game of, I mean, when the brain, which is the instrument, processes information so fast, we are processing information so fast, it's very hard to be aware of what the mechanism, what's exactly happening on an internal level. It's very hard to truly grasp this because everything is moving at Planck speed. It's so fast, so rapid, and there's all this, stimulation coming in, and for us to kind of stop and slow down and bring the attention back into the mind and body to understand what's happening, it takes a lot of awareness, it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes, a certain maturity to go back within and start becoming self-aware. And without truly doing this, then thoughts will always haunt you because they will take your attention, and then you'll bring these thoughts into your field of experience. And for some people, they believe everything that they think. They believe that they are their thoughts, to the point where, again, it really kind of suppresses their being to be limited to their level of thinking because they can't feel greater than the way they think. And if they're thinking from a very low vibrational state, then their being is suppressed to that feeling, which it makes it very difficult to transcend because they don't have the self-awareness to understand the mechanism of what's truly happening within themselves. And through awareness, and we start to understand and start to become aware of this phenomena, we can start to break the conditioning, we can start to break the shackles, we can start to become more the conscious observer than the thoughts. And again, this is something we have to practice and really cultivate this state, because it's not something we can understand through the mind, because again, the intellect can't grasp such a deep experience. It's completely two different levels of experience. We can, the mind's a great tool to pointing us to the experience, but this has to be felt. And when you start to drop into the heart more and start to feel more, your level of mindfulness, your level of self-awareness starts to grow. And this is, I think, what cultivates the foundation to, heightening your self-awareness and connecting with your truth. The purpose of observing. At this point, let me clarify that if you are just observing mechanically, you have not understood what it really means to observe. And one way or another, you are going to get pulled back into the scene again. What is the purpose of observing? The instruction to observe is given so that you can verify and thus clarify that whatever you may be seeing or experiencing is merely transient. It cannot be who you are. In the moment you are looking at the turbulent mind, it certainly seems real enough. The effects in their highest pulsation feel so intimately connected with who you take yourself to be. It is as if they were the very lifeblood flowing through your veins and the very air moving through your lungs. Still, this isn't sufficient evidence that any of it is real, because in a moment or two, the breath of egoic identity has already been exhaled and the screaming mind has already passed. Just hold your ground as the individual seer. Identity implies I entity. Any habitual or persistent problems or emotions are growing as a person and I, me. Underneath them, This is why I say where there is identity, it implies an I entity. If there is a bad smell in the room, you can engage your sense of smell. Aha, it smells like gas. And then you follow it until you find the gas leak. In much the same way that we can follow a bad smell to its source, we can use strong emotions such as anger, guilt, fear, restless mind, and so forth to sniff out the identity. Whatever the circumstance that brings up personal identity for you, use that energetic presence of the particular feeling in the body to see if you can find the I entity who feels impacted of what is happening. Wherever the feeling, look inward and inquire, can an actual I entity be found? Who is suffering? Who is complaining? Can the guilty party be found and presented? Turn your attention inward and just be quiet. Don't add any opinions to self-inquiry. Don't change the question. Be aware of the mind's tendency to become distracted. Just try to cleanly identify the one who is disturbed or suffering. Can it be perceived? Can you find a suffering I? Is it tangible? Could it be that the felt sense of identity is merely a sensation that has become clothed in identity as who I am? That in fact there is nobody there who is suffering. This is a big one, and this is one that I think we touched up on a couple of weeks ago, and it was mind blowing to kind of understand the revelation here is that when we suffer, and we go through an experience, and we feel like, oh my God, this person threw all this anger on me. Oh my God, this person laid their hands on me. Oh my God, this person broke my heart. Oh my God, this person betrayed me. Oh my God, life sucks. Whatever it is that isn't going towards your expectation or creating stress or anxiety in your body in that moment, we take it so personally, don't we? We take it so personally. I'm suffering because we feel we identify with this lower vibrational state to the extent that it plays out a narrative in our mind that is part of our personal history, the movie of life or our personality, and we kind of consume our beings to this feeling or this projection of what we who we believe we are in this storyline. And then the ego loves taking this story, especially when you're suffering, and creating a narrative that kind of goes with the story, keeping you in this lower vibrational state. And then when you start talking about it with other people, oh, you know what this person did to me, and how dare they do that to me, and they start validating why that person was wrong, and blah blah blah, and you start playing out the narrative more and more. We start becoming addicted to the chemistry that all this experience has manifested within our own beings. And over time, this can become a part of our personality because we programmed it on a neurological level. We then programmed it on a biological level. And next thing you know, we love suffering. We've mastered suffering. We are good sufferers. This is what we do now. We suffer. And then we're acting from a place of lack and suffering, and life just gives us more suffering, more experiences to suffer, more people that make us suffer, more circumstances to make us suffer, because this is what we're used to. This is what we're conditioned to. And we have no idea what we're broadcasting into the field because we don't have the self-awareness that, we are the victim of our subconscious mechanisms, and we program this level of thinking that really keeps us low. And when we start to go, if in the same scenario that I've just explained, in one moment, if that person has the realization, okay, let's go within you and become aware of who is suffering. So I feel the anxiety, I feel the stress, I feel the uncomfortable feelings in my body. I'm aware of these energies. I'm aware of the narrative. There's a narrative being played out in my mind, and I'm aware of the narrative. But who is it that is truly suffering? Where is this position? If you truly inquire and you go deep enough, you will see that there is only space in which all this form and content is manifesting on, and the and what keeps it alive is your definition to what has happened, right? Is your definition of personhood, is your connection or identification with personhood. But really, personhood is a phenomena or a projection or an activity that is taking place in this space, right? In this space, in this awareness. It is a dance in this awareness. It is a show in this awareness, because a year from now or sometime in the future, you're going to be happy, you're going to be joyful, and that's a different dance, or even tomorrow. So the point is, it's just activity that is happening in the ether, in the space awareness, and inquiring deep enough and really penetrating through those barriers of emotions and narratives and going to the core of that experience. There's actually no one there that is suffering, because you don't exist as you believe you do exist. You are identified to this level of thinking and narrative and a personal history that you hold on to, because your loyalty is to the past and who you think you are. And you're holding on to these feelings because these feelings are playing out this narrative, and this story is telling you that, and especially your ego, how could this happen to me? And you've taken it so personal, because it is a self-preservation, the self-preservation of the ego. Because God forbid, if you had to strip your ego away, your history and your suffering, you wouldn't know who you are. Who are you without the suffering? Who are you without the depression? Who are you without the drama? Who are you without all your personal objects and your big success? Who are you then? Strip all that away. You're by yourself with nothing and no one. Who are you? Do you have the connection with the self strong enough to understand that you are beyond all the phenomena and the objects and stories and emotional patterns that you kind of keep alive within your own domain, and some people, it's scary. It's scary to transcend all this, because it's the dark night of the soul. It's a dark night of the soul, and we're not ready for such a big transformation, the metamorphosis from a physical being to a spiritual being. And maybe this is why we go round and around, and we keep coming back, and it's the eternal search of enlightenment, only to realize that we're already enlightened. We're already perfect in our true nature. We just haven't had the self-awareness to understand the perfection within us, because we have been caught up in this dualistic reality to the point that it has limited our consciousness to this level of experience that we call Earth. And now we believe we are these physical beings running around with these genetic spacesuits, living these little roles that we play, and we believe that this is all that we are. I need this, I need that, and we get so consumed in our bubbles, and we think we're going to live forever, until boom, you're there taking your last few breaths, and you look back at life and think, shit, where did all that go? What have I learned? What is the meaning to this? And this is the scary truth for a lot of us, because we do not understand or recognize why we are here. What is our purpose? What does this all mean? What does the self mean? What does it mean to go within? We're not ready for it. But I think it's scary living in this dualistic nature, because it creates suffering, knowing that everything you love one day has to go, and you don't know what's going to happen after that. It's a scary thought. It's something that's deep within all of us, that we have to lose everything we love. But once we start to transcend this dualistic understanding, and we start to really experience life from the observation, from the awareness, and then we start to see how fragile life is, but we recognize how infinite we are. We recognize our consciousness and our power. Then this life is a playground. This life is a playground to be played in. We've come here to become experientially rich, and we live every single moment with wholeheartedly embracing everything, because it's all part of the process. It's all part of the game of life. It's all part of growing and evolving. And what you think is so serious now, tomorrow won't be so serious. And what you think is what's worrying you today is going to be wisdom tomorrow. And sometimes we don't understand why things happen in the moment, but again, it's your intuition taking you through this journey, and we repeat what we don't learn. Right? We're all here to learn. And I think that when we start to really inquire and go within and start to observe everything, we can find a peace that is unchangeable, that can't be taken away from you, that can't be robbed by the ego, that is so independent to anything outside of yourself, that cannot be penetrated through the equations of life and the tangible activities as we kind of experience in life. It is something that is intangible, that is always there and will always be there, but it needs to be recognized and really exposed for it to surface. And once you can kind of find the solace within your own beingness and really embrace this, this is where I think true love is. This is where we will feel complete. And that's something we can take with us forever, which is eternal. Identify implies identity. Okay, we just read that. For most people, mental activity has become compulsive and addiction and an affliction, a chattering voice that simply won't stop. Self-inquiry should not be meant should be self-inquiry should not be done mentally. It is not just repeating who am I? Who am I? Who am I? With the hope that an answer or object will appear as the self. You have to actually look and do not hold a preconceived idea of who you may find. The inquiry has to be fresh each time. Do not wait. Don't wait to harbor expectations, not even expectations based on memory of what happened the last time you inquired, of that beautiful glimpse that you had some time ago. No, you have to be fresh. That is why my advice is to remain only in the timeless neutrality of awareness. Your neutrality will neutralize everything and bring it back to its fundamental, essential nature. So, by being aware, by understanding the power of awareness, we start to reset the body to its original blueprint. And with that comes an immense level of healing. You want to heal all different aspects of your life, just be the observer, sit in awareness, and allow the greater intelligence in the body to heal the body. And we know this is evident because anyone that studied spontaneous remissions from cancer, and I've spoken about this a few times in the past, it all happens from connecting with that 0 point field of consciousness. And all these people didn't take drugs, or they didn't take any type of surgeries, or they actually did everything outside the mainstream medical modality, and they just went within themselves and they started to heal themselves. And it was done through raising their vibration, raising their presence, raising their consciousness, flooding attention into the body, and increasing the strength of their mana. This is the most potent level of healing, because when you heal something on an energetic level, it translates into the emotional, mental, and finally the physical, because the physical outcropping of symptoms is the most creative, is the least creative condition, meaning that it's just an outcropping. And when you try and just heal something on it, not in all cases, obviously I'm generalizing here, when you try heal something on a physical level, it just, you're just putting a band-aid over the symptoms, when there can be a deeper issue happening on an energetic level. Now, this is not in all cases, but in some cases, I think when our energy wrong is when there's something wrong with our energy or our emotions, we're harboring negative emotions for too long, I think the body will manifest a physical illness, physical dis-ease, when you're not at ease with yourself, to let you know, hey, take it easy, relax, breathe, be present. The body is the biggest teacher. Um, what will happen as you let go of obsessive control is that delusions will disappear and it will fog off depression. The sense of displacement, worry about the future, the fear of death, and the fear of life, all of this will be history when we embrace the full potential of our being. Only grace can bring you this freedom to this inner tranquility, and grace won't keep you waiting. In nature, you may wait for rain. Are you like that? Like dry land waiting for rain. There is something you don't have to wait for because it is already here. It is at the root of who you are. This is the great news. You have to wait for everything else, to get married, to have children, to get a job, to get paid, your wages, and you even have to wait for dinner. But grace is something you don't have to wait for. There is a saying of Saint there is a saying from Saint Francis of Assisi. And I thought Rumi said this, so I stand to be corrected. And the saying is, what you are looking for is already where you are looking from. Very powerful quote, as we've mentioned and talked about many times on our lives, but it's actually said by Saint Francis of Assisi. So there you go. All this time I've been giving Rumi the credit. But Rumi also says, knocking on a door, it opens. I've been knocking from the inside. So it goes back to the teaching of the Tao Te Ching. You know, when you stop trying to be accepted, you are accepted. When you stop trying to reach it, you feel it. When you stop trying to find it, you are found, or it finds you. That's the paradox of just dropping or falling into emptiness, the way of the Tao. What you are looking for is already where you are looking from. Both are big clues and profound pointers to the truth of who you are. So why does it seem like a riddle? Because we just cannot believe that it could possibly be so simple. It only becomes supremely difficult because we want to achieve emptiness with the unstable and unchangeable mind. Hardship is not necessary. Self realization is not about I have to eat only nuts and berries while living naked in a cave until I realize the self. But people hold on to such a monumental ideals and believe things like no pain, no gain. Look how much hardship spiritual seekers have inflicted upon themselves. While it may be an expression that some need to go through, it's generally not necessary. Discovering your true nature doesn't require that you suffer hardship or give up anything you enjoy. All that you see in life emerges with the womb of God. God is beyond us and them, like and dislike. And yet, the very duality can be enjoyed by everyone when we see it in its correct way. Duality can be playful, but if you take yourself to be only an individual person, your experience in life is going to be intense or even tragic or cruel. And this is right because we suffer being the personality identified with an impermanent reality subject to change is always going to create instability within ourself because everything is changing. We are changing, our thoughts are changing, beliefs are changing, our partners are changing. For some people our gender is changing, our religion is changing, everything is changing. Everything is changing. So when we identify with the impermanent, with a reality that is changing, what happens to our emotional state? We are up and down, up and down, up and down. And this creates suffering because the ego naturally wants to hold onto and attach itself to anything that it finds pleasure in, anything that makes it feel good, because we crave that like an addiction. On many levels, some people would say we are all addicts. We all have an addiction. You don't have to be a drug addict to be an addict. Some people are addicted to shopping. Some people are addicted to sex. Some people are addicted to alcohol. Some people are addicted to being healthy, going to the gym. I think we all have addictions on one level or not. But when when you kind of just live in that dualistic realm, you are governed by your biochemistry. And when you're governed by a biochemistry and you don't really understand how your biomechanics work or biochemistry works, then your craving or your yearning for certain chemical reactions can create suffering because chemicals become desensitized, they become neutralized, and what gave you a hit or a feeling one day, you may need more the next day. And maybe when we say I miss you to our partners, are we just missing the chemical reaction that person is giving us? There's a very thin line between ego love and heart love, and I think for many of us we don't understand the difference because sometimes we portray love to be this biochemical addiction to the person. And this is where, thanks, Sonny. And this is where, can really cultivate such primitive states in the body because the ego will bring out this obsessiveness, this jealousy, this envious attitudes and control because the ego loves, the ego loves psychological love, the concept of being in love, the concept of connecting with someone, the concept of having someone there and your partner and the preconceived expectations of what a relationship should be, whatnot. But really, is love just a biochemical feeling in the body? And it can be, but then there's a deeper level of love, the love, the way you love your mum, the way you love your kids, the way you love your dogs. It's a more unconditional love. And I think it's a frequency. And when you connect to that frequency, you allow this love to move through you because you can't love someone one minute, then attack them the next minute verbally, and your love can't be conditional. Like, and you can't love your family and then walk out and just be an asshole to everyone else on the street, And some people are like that, to truly be in love frequency, I think you have to be a beacon of light to everyone that comes in your space. That is true love. And that's how we cultivate true love, when you are actually vibrating in a state of love. And this is where you transcend duality and you really are in this present state of love and joyfulness. And when you meet people like that because they're just a bundle of joy to be around. There's nothing you can look at here in life, especially in your inner life, that could be said to be a fact. Everything exists in the realm of possibility, and the quality of the content in your inner life will be determined by who you are, who perceives it. Nothing in life has a single inherent meaning. Rather, it will be different meaning for different beings according to their conditioning, identity, and so on. None of it's stable, but it is all functioning of consciousness nonetheless. You simultaneously act in the play and are and you are the most attentive audience, being moved by the story, intrigued by the plot, and also critical of the acting and scripting. One day you merge with the pure observer and transcend both the role and actor and that of the critical audience. Then you and your life are one. When you become empty of the ego, you'll move through this world happily and unburdened. That's beautiful. That's actually very powerful. And it's true. Life is like a movie. And you're an actor in this movie, and everyone you meet is an actor or an actress in your movie, but you're also the director, you're also the audience, you're also, everything. There's so many different elements to your movie, and you've got this level of free will and control, so it's up to you to really write a blockbuster movie, act out a blockbuster movie that one day you want to look back and watch. You are the author of your own book, so write a bestseller. Every day, every choice, every thought is another line written in your book. Be the Michelangelo of your own painting, be the hero of your own story. That's right. um Dissolving the mind's residue. Okay, so I'm just going to skip that. For instance, if you were clearly to see someone stealing something from you, would you even entertain doubts about who the thief really was? No, you wouldn't. In much the same way, you've looked and seen the state of personhood is not real. Whenever it comes back, you'll recognize this is the thief who is attempting to rob you of your own inherent peace, meaning that you take your personality way too seriously. Like your personality, you take it so seriously that it takes away your personhood, it takes away your presence, because your loyalty is to your past, to your narrative, to your ego. Bring that loyalty to your presence, to yourself, and really spend time observing all these elements and all these variables that are happening in the play and display of life through space awareness. Once you see all as consciousness, you will no longer be the moving things about, chopping down trees or putting out fires. Instead, by simply looking from your own source, being, you will understand that thoughts are just dancing images projected into your own screen of consciousness. You see them for what they are, and you know that this seeing is not just a belief. Look at how momentary thoughts are. Here one moment, gone the next. So why fall in love with the cloud? How can that marriage last? All phenomena are like clouds drifting away. They come and they go. Right? Do not try and hold on to a cloud. You'll only suffer because you cannot hold on to a thought. Right? So don't pay attention to thoughts that will bring you down. Pay attention to thoughts that will lift you up. Don't follow the person poison. Let me see what we got here. Okay, we're nearly finished. Okay. Often in satsang, people come to ask a question, and in that question, I can hear that they are still strongly identified with the sense of personhood, personality identification. For example, one man, he constantly saw a film of his failures running through his mind, so much that he even dreamed about those failures. He felt guilty and unworthy and unwanted to let go of those regrets. He's not alone in this wishing. Many people also feel this way, but it is only the person that says, I am caught up in this life, but I want to be finished with it all. I don't ask you to disidentify from that person, just to be aware of this identification and to ask yourself, what is aware of identity? Does that which is aware of my story itself have a story? Let the personal story be there, but acknowledge that it has to be granted tremendous significance and has therefore exercised a greatly negative influence over the quality of your life. Now, you may have to become aware of this, but something still doesn't quite understand the significance of just being aware. What am I referring to as not an awareness of anything, but rather awareness itself? As soon as you turn your attention to the awareness, you will notice that the attention is also observed from and in awareness. Few seem to value this awareness, even though it is the source of their own existence. the animation that makes up the body, you know, the fuel, the fire within you, the divine spark, the essence. There is a space within that is kind of neutral fueled from where you can look at all aspects in your life. You don't even have to go out in search of them, as they will float up into your view themselves. Learn to look, but watch out for the tendency to interpret events. Many things will happen in our lives that are in and out of themselves, just day to day occurrences. The real poison is in the tendency to interpret, which comes forward and attaches meaning to those expressions. And such interpretations is always about dwelling on the realm of the personal. You didn't do well on this one. They were laughing at you. They excluded you again. This is the second year in a row that the Christmas cards were reused and had someone else's name erased and written over. The tendency to take things personally will make you go for all these things that hurt, because that is your poison. It is especially good at creating imagined grievance. So just observe, and as you observe, you can tell the story. You may even tell the story. You are aware of the story being told, but you don't get pulled into this because there is no story in the greater space you are looking out from. Through this awareness, you will find that the change in the orientation of your life is perceiving. The change in orientation of your life or perceiving is beginning to occur soon as you begin to speak of your ex problems. Most people go through times in their lives when challenges seem to come from all sides, personal, professional, spiritual. In those times, it can be difficult to trust the transitions are opportunities for tremendous growth and even awakening to occur. You cannot tell what shape of things will be at the given juncture of life. You cannot know how it will turn out, yet all too often we act as we do know. So, and I'll finish off with this last bit and we'll talk about this. Welcome the lion on your path. Papa G used to tell a story of a young woman who was about to get married. The wedding was held at the very next day. The wedding was to be held the very next day, and she was in the full thrill of preparations. Now, this young woman lived in a forest, so she started to walk to the nearby town, which the list of final appointments with the baker, florist, dressmaker, and priest. In the springtime, it was springtime, so everything was in bloom. She was absolutely brimming of joy in her life, skipping through the forest, absorbed of her visions of her beloved, the coming marriage, children, and grandchildren, and how blissful her future would be surrounded by those who love her. Then suddenly a hungry lion appeared right in front of her on her path. He was so close that she could feel the smell of his breath. In this instant, the baker gone, dressmaker gone, florist and priest gone, even her beloved, the light of her life completely gone. At that moment, she was absolutely alone. No time, no future, no intention, no past, no identity. The master says, welcome the lion on your path. Until you do, you will always be planning tomorrow you don't have, and a next you don't have. You'll be planning a tomorrow you don't have, and a next week that nobody can promise you. And your mind will reverberate with this noise of otherness and changefulness. We have all acquired the habits of projecting into a future and clinging to a past. You are full of claustrophobic noise of identity, intention, promise, and fantasy, future and past. What will strip you back to the place before? What will strip you back to the place before and beyond time and intention? How far from there are you right now? What's left for you to do? That unfinished business before you can simply be left as the pressureless self. Remember, the mind is not going to just take a holiday. What will bring you back into this instant? When will you have a moment to be just you, not carrying a message for tomorrow, but a moment of your own self? Welcome the lion on your path. Until you do, you will always be planning a tomorrow you don't have and a next week that nobody can promise you. This is very powerful, very powerful. And we are not promised tomorrow. We are not promised next week. We are not promised next year. You know, it's great to have visions, goals, ambitions, desires, but We're not promised any of these things. So to really, live in a level of mind that kind of is always chasing tomorrow can create a lot of suffering, right? And it also I remember being young and people a bit younger, and people ask me, so what do you want out of the future? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And I used to say, I've already been given so much. I've already been given so much in my life that whatever I get tomorrow is only a bonus, and I embrace today. And for me to want anything more is taking life for granted, you know. And reflecting back on that now is very wise, because not expecting anything from tomorrow allows me to embrace today wholeheartedly, and looking at what happens tomorrow is a bonus. If the universe permits, or if God permits, or whatever belief you have, for me to experience tomorrow, then that in itself is a beautiful experience that I will experience wholeheartedly. And this is life, like really understanding that today is a gift, and really trying to do the most we can to embrace today. And I apologize if you can hear that annoying sound in the background. Someone is ringing my doorbell. Sorry, 1 second. Just give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, I'm just messaging my friend. Sorry about that. I was meant to finish the live, but it just kind of went on. But I did kind of stay in the zone and not get distracted by the doorbell. I don't know if you noticed that. And that's what happens in life sometimes. There's all these chaos happening around us, but we have to stay focused, and we have to be present, and we have to be professional in what we're doing, and not get distracted by what's happening, even though that doorbell was so annoying. And I really felt like just pulling it out of the wall. I stayed very calm. I stayed very calm, and I've just messaged my friend to relax. I hate when I get disturbed and people disturb me in my lives. It really just triggers my ego. I just get so triggered. I get so unhappy. Um, but it's just my ego and my level of perfection, I guess. And I just got to stay calm and just chill. Um, you thought it was the background music? No, definitely not the background music. It's so annoying, that doorbell. So used to it now. But anyway, so I think today was a really powerful live. I really enjoyed reading that chapter more than any other chapters, because there was a lot of great metaphors and stories that really give us an understanding on Mooji's teachings, and how he, you get an insight on how this brilliant mind operates, and where, because for a teacher to be authentic, and especially me, I'm very critical when I listen to other teachers, because unless they're coming from an authentic place, I'm just not receptive to it. So I find, and you guys tell me what you think, when someone is teaching from a very authentic place of presence, it's easier for them to deliver that information, because it's not very textbook. It's coming from an experience. So when Muji teaches, it's an experience that he's teaching, because he's experiencing it, right? And that's why his delivery is so beautiful, and so profound, and so powerful. And this chapter really encompassed, how he perceives life and reality, and how he breaks down the mind, and how it all operates. And it gives us, understanding that, the metaphor of the two birds, the one bird being dynamic and the other bird being the awareness. Well, that's our life. We're playing this life, and we're very active, and we go out there and we have this personality, but there is this bird in the background, or consciousness, that is becoming aware, that is aware of all this, but it's very still in its presence and observation. But then there's a space that also holds both the dynamic bird and the bird that is aware. And that's the space where, I mean, our true power is, that we can inquire and go within and really connect to. So I found that very powerful, very, very powerful. And again, the treasure that we have within us, it's there, but we are just not aware of it. right? And when we become aware of it and we connect to it, there's just a sense of peacefulness. Because when we truly change with the boundless, the unchangeable, the infinite awareness, there is no more fear because we recognize we are consciousness, we are the ocean. You know, we're not this raindrop isolated personality that is so separate from life. We have now emerged with the ocean of consciousness and we are one. And and the realizations and the insights and downloads you acquire from this level of experience is that everything is transient, everything, and love is the ultimate answer. And we're just here to be experientially rich, and every moment is magical. And do not attach yourself to a moment because that lion jumping out in front of you can take it all away from you. In that moment, there are no desires, there are no expectations of what's going to happen tomorrow. There are no loved ones, there are no objects, bank accounts. There's nothing. That lion will take all that away from you. And in that moment, all that matters is your presence and your breath and your ability to be in the experience. And I think that that metaphor of the lion is a big teacher, because unless we embrace the lion, then we become too attached to life. And when we become too attached to life, our hearts will only have to uncling. And when we the degree of our attachment is going to reflect the degree of our suffering. So we have to be very mindful. Yes, we are going to suffer on some degree, and we have to mourn, and we have to process the opposite side of love, which is sadness, and having a healthy perspective and understanding that, okay, I feel sadness, but that sadness represents my love for that person, for that experience, for whatever it is going to allow you to navigate through this experience with a lot more peacefulness. And that's what it's about, is about being at peace in your own hearts and not harboring the emotions that are really going to haunt you and bring you down. And through self-awareness, you start to understand that you are not the thoughts, you are not the emotions, you are not the feelings, you are not even the suffering, that there is a deeper dimension to your experience that allows this phenomena and all these activities to take place in. And when we truly understand this knowledge and experience it, then life isn't so serious anymore, right? Life, thank you so much for Brave for supporting the channel. Life isn't so serious anymore. Life is more of a phenomena. It is magical, and it is just an absolute adventure, and time is of an essence, and we have a limited amount of time. So just make every choice, every action, every moment count. Embrace yourself and really just have fun, because if you're not having fun, then it's not worth it, right? This whole experience isn't worth it. Have fun and stop over intellectualizing and creating complex problems when life is just maybe meant to be a bit more simple if we're just open and allow these experiences to move through us without identifying to the degree that we start to over complex things. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. There is a meditation at the end of this chapter which I will do on Wednesday. So Wednesday, I will read this meditation at the end of this chapter, and then we'll do our breathwork and binaural. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here, giving me your attention, and just having just an amazing session. I really, really enjoyed this session and really enjoyed exploring chapter 4 with everyone. I think it's been just such a absolute honor to really have the opportunity to express the beautiful insights in this book. And I'm really loving what I'm learning and how this book is starting to change me as a level of awareness and as a being. So really thank you guys for being here. And until next time, thank you guys. Oscar from Stressfit. I'll see everyone on the next live.